Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we have a story that is equal parts serious, outrageous, and frankly, a little unbelievable. It comes from Newcastle, KwaZulu-Natal, where the MK Party's Labour desk claims to have busted a Chinese-owned textile factory allegedly employing over 80 undocumented workers. Yes, you heard that right, more than 80. Now, if you think that
Men boy sasa.
Men boy, komande kabal. Asani kama benen ko.
Wala msante amaphoyisa. Bewela sibenza amaphoyisa phela. Waphela ayi bayasho wana amaphepha amanye ama-passports. Wena bafuna i-passport. Unayo sampe. Kufanele ukuthi uhlale uhamba naye. Ishukuza kufanele ngabe uhlale uhamba naye.
Yona ifanele vele kuhamba naye ngoba kuhamba nekhophi yayo.
Une 9 months order so wena umphathi.
Hayi, ngoba ukuthi nje bazifika ngabafika. Wazi ukuthi kwathi.
Lesho lentsini yes.
Lizana kwasegula.
Akusayibana nje. Loze kufika.
Asivaleni. Asivaleni.
Fanele abala South Africa benen knowledge usibana mntana. No.
Thatha konke details umabili. Ya umabili. Waphela sasebenza no uthethula ngoni khona. No uthethula ukukhuluma ngefoni. Uma nje
80 workers inside were illegal immigrants with no permits, no visas, and certainly no protection under South African law. Now, here's where it gets interesting. South Africa has some of the strictest labor protections on paper, but in reality, enforcement is weak. The Department of Labor is underfunded and often unable to monitor thousands of small and medium-sized factories across the country. That creates a breeding ground for exploitation. Illegal workers are the perfect target, desperate for work, fearful of deportation, and willing to accept wages far below what South African workers would tolerate. And that's exactly what critics say is happening in Newcastle. Of course, the MK Party wasted no time in publicizing the bust. For them, this is political gold. They get to position themselves as defenders of local workers, standing up against foreign-owned companies and the state's failure to enforce the law. They can rally unemployed South Africans behind them by pointing to what they describe as exploitation and lawlessness. And make no mistake, labor issues strike a chord in this country, especially when youth unemployment hovers around 45%. But before we all grab our pitchforks, let's pause for a moment. The story isn't just about one factory. It's about the broader tension between South Africans and foreign nationals. For years, protests have erupted in places like Johannesburg, Durban, and Pretoria where foreign-owned shops and factories have been accused of stealing jobs. The anger is very real, but sometimes it also slides into xenophobia, with migrants from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, or Malawi being scapegoated for the failures of government and the collapse of industries. The Newcastle bust, then, is not just a labor dispute, it feeds directly into that national conversation about jobs, migration, and sovereignty. Now, if you're sitting at home wondering how a factory can employ 80 undocumented workers without anyone noticing, you're not alone. How does something like this slip past the Department of Home Affairs? How does SARS not notice if workers are being paid off the books? And where are the local inspectors who are supposed to check safety conditions? Either the system is completely broken, or there's a deliberate decision to look the other way, because these factories keep operating. Let's also talk about the workers themselves. It's easy to paint them as villains, illegal immigrants taking jobs from South Africans. But for many of them, this is survival. They cross borders with nothing, hoping to earn even a small income to feed families back home. The real villains, some would argue, are the factory owners who exploit their desperation, rake in profits, and undercut local competitors who actually follow the law. Imagine owning a small South African textile shop in Newcastle and trying to compete against a company paying workers a fraction of the legal wage. You wouldn't last a year. And yet, the political spin is powerful. The MK party has already used this buzz to hammer home its populist message: South Africans first, foreigners out, and strict enforcement of the law. Expect them to wave this case like a flag at rallies, pointing to it as proof that they, not the ANC or DA, are defending ordinary workers. There's also an international angle. China is South Africa's largest trading partner, and Chinese-owned businesses are everywhere, from retail stores to factories. Whenever a scandal like this surfaces, it puts strain on perceptions of that relationship. Is this simply one rogue business owner? Or is it part of a wider pattern where Chinese companies bend the rules in South Africa, confident that local officials will be too scared to act for fear of upsetting Beijing? Here's the irony. The same government that talks tough about protecting jobs is also desperate for foreign investment. Politicians will shout about illegal immigrants during campaigns, but when it comes to big business, suddenly the rules get blurry. It's a double standard that South Africans are becoming increasingly tired of. To bring in a bit of humor, one could almost imagine the MK Labour desk agents walking into the factory like a scene from a detective movie. Picture it, sewing machines whirring, fabric piled up, and suddenly politicians in leather jackets declaring, "We've got you surrounded." If it weren't so serious, it would be comedy. 80 undocumented workers in one place is less of a bust and more of an open secret that everyone chose to ignore until it became politically useful. At the end of the day, this story forces us to ask a few uncomfortable questions. Should South Africa crack down harder on undocumented labor, even if it means throwing desperate families into poverty? Should it focus on punishing employers, who are the ones creating the demand in the first place? Or is the entire debate a distraction from the deeper issue, that the South African economy simply isn't creating enough jobs for anyone, local or foreign? The Newcastle textile bust is not the first of its kind, and it certainly won't be the last. But it does show how politics, economics, and migration collide in this country. Whether you see the MK party as heroes protecting workers, or opportunists exploiting a hot-button issue, one thing is clear: this is a story that cuts to the bone of South Africa's struggles with unemployment, corruption, and inequality. So, what do you think? Should undocumented workers be deported immediately, or should the focus be on holding factory owners accountable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this debate isn't going away anytime soon. If you found this video informative, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more in-depth political commentary, and share this with friends who enjoy real conversations about South Africa.